You've just landed in the music landing zone, and today I'm going to be going over 10 bands or artists who changed my whole life. These are bands or artists that came into my life at the perfect time, came into my life and just blew my mind and opened the door to either just a deepening love of music in general, or led me to later getting into more bands or artists that are somewhat similar to these bands or artists. So, the first band or artist that changed my life in a big way is Billy Talent. Billy Talent is the Canadian rock band. How do you even describe Billy Talent? They're my favorite band of all time. Their first 4 albums are untouchable. It's insane how good this band is. They're punk, they're emo, they've got a little bit of new metal influence in especially their first album. Just a little bit of that sprinkled in there. They were big fans of new metal before they put out the first album back in their Pez days. Billy Talent, fantastic band, opened my mind to loving music. When I was a young boy, my parents would listen to pop radio at the time, and I found a lot of that pop music kind of weird, kind of strange. I was listening into some of the lyrics that may have not been totally appropriate for a mind my age at the time, and I was catching on to some things. It kind of disturbed me. Billy Talent came in at first as through the song Red Flag, which my older brother would listen to at the time, and just a couple years later I would get my first tiny iPod, and my older brother put the Billy Talent albums on my iPod, and I listened to them loads. They introduced me to this idea that music could be loud, it could be angry, it could be exciting in a big way. You know, at first when I was listening to Billy Talent, I really liked the energetic stuff. I really liked the anger, the angst, that kind of thing. And, you know, I think in another way this is still angst, but they're also the first ever band that I really connected to with like a heartbreak song, that kind of relationship side, which will be a big theme through a lot of my list here, not all of it, but you know how it goes in middle school and high school with relationships and stuff like that, or lack thereof. Yeah, it's great. Billy Talent is great. Check out especially their first 4 albums. Pretty much a perfect run there. So moving on to the second band or artist that changed my life, it's Foster the People. My older brother was into this band, artist, whatever you want to call it, this alt-pop group. Before they blew up by a couple of weeks, I was actually there and put this album on my iPod, and the Torches album, and I connected to it in a big way. Of course, you had the big radio hit, Pumped Up Kicks, which actually is and was one of my least favorite on the album. But you have tracks like Houdini, you have tracks like Hell in a Beat, you have Waste. I mean, that first Torches album blew my mind. It was amazingly produced. It was fun. It was relatable. It was a little bit weird and alternative while still being polished and amazingly written and all these things. And their second album would come out, Supermodel, and that album blew my mind. Supermodel is one of my favorite albums of all time. I was disappointed by their third album, and then their latest album I think is actually pretty cool. I think it has some great ideas on it. I think Mark Foster has found his footing again, at least to my ear, of course. But he's laughing to the bank with tracks like "Sit Next to You" or whatever that one was off the third album that I don't like very much. So he doesn't need me to agree with his choices there. But yeah, that's my take on Foster the People. Check out especially those three albums. It's great stuff. Nevermind, one of my favorite songs of all time. So coming in at number 3 is Muse. This was really the herald of a transformation. And before this, I had been listening to Billy Talent, Foster the People, some of Michael Jackson's hits, the first Black Tide album. It was a lot less in terms of the quantity. It was quite a regular rotation, a little bit of Green Day in there too, some of their hits. Muse opened the door to so many things for me. This is the British power trio. Amazing, amazing stuff here. There's kind of been like a movement as of late to retroactively diss Muse because of some of their later releases kind of being a bit weaker, kind of being a bit dad rocky, kind of being, a bit cheesy. But yeah, Muse is fantastic. Their first couple albums are just stellar, stellar, stellar. And I even really love Resistance, Second Law. I think Drones has a lot going on to it that some people might not like, but I like about half of that album quite a bit, and then the rest is kind of weak for me. But Muse changed how I viewed music. Here was just amazing songs that I related to. It was angsty, it's dark, it's space rock. Sounded like something from a different planet had descended, and I was tapping into it here. Amazing stuff, cryptic kind of lyrics that I really liked, but we're kind of led to meanings. Space Dementia, one of my absolute all-time favorite tracks. Time is Running Out, Knights of Sidonia. Muse is fantastic, and they changed my life. Getting into Muse would lead me to other bands like Queens of the Stone Age that I didn't put on the list, but great band. Yeah, I'll go on to my number 4 band. This is Primus, another trio. Primus really got me into weird music, in air quotes. Primus is, if you've not heard Primus before, I almost feel the need to prepare you mentally for the oddity that is Primus. If you're already into avant-garde sort of stuff, if you're already listening to your Zappas and your Residents and your Beefhearts, these kind of artists, then you probably don't need as much primer to listen to Primus. But if you're not in that kind of a zone, what is Primus? It's like you take Les Claypool, who is this, I don't know if he's like this in his private life, but in his public persona and in his songwriting, he comes across as this kind of cartoon character, and often the songs will inhabit characters that are very cartoony, like Tommy the Cat, to give one example. But he himself acts very, like he could be from a 1920s cartoon or something. And he's got this odd singing that's the sing-speak sort of thing with this accent going on, and it's hilarious. I often find that there's a bit of a humorous edge to Primus that I enjoy. It's not like it's a joke It's not like it's joke music. It's not necessarily like meant to be taken unseriously, but there is this little bit of a humorous edge to Primus that I really enjoy, while it's still being fantastic and touching on serious issues and all these things. You really can't go wrong with the first 3 albums. That's pretty much an untouchable trilogy there. Fantastic stuff. Les Claypool is a bass master. If you know anything about Primus, you know about Les Claypool and his bass playing. Fantastic, fantastic. Moving right along to my number 5 band. Came into my life and changed everything. System of a Down. Here is a band that is maybe the most political that I had ever gotten into in a very big way yet. They really are a powerful group. You know, kind of like Primus, some people might be off-put. I mean, people might be off-put by a lot of things. You know, we all hear things differently. But System of a Down, I have heard 1 or 2 complaints about Serge's singing, which I don't get. I mean, I think he's fantastic. I think this whole band is fantastic. I think the System of a Down discography is pretty much perfect front to back. Debut, Toxicity, Steal This Album, the Hypnotize, Mesmerize. It's pretty much untouchable. Great riffs, fast, furious, politically charged, Armenian metal, kind of fusion between metal and Armenian traditional music here. It's great stuff, really great. If you've somehow not heard System of a Down, you really need to dive in. You can start with any of the albums pretty much. Toxicity is their most famous and biggest selling, so that's maybe the place you start. But wow, System of a Down opened my mind, opened my ears. Great stuff. Great stuff. Number 6, moving along, we have Depeche Mode. Now, I had gotten into the Violator album in my grade 12 year in a big way. I had known the song Enjoy the Silence for even longer than that, but I finally was like, well, that song is so good, let's put on the whole Violator album. I was blown away. Slap it on my device. Becomes a big hitter in that grade 12 year, final year of high school. And yeah, after that, in my year after high school, I think I started getting into them in a really big way. I started listening to the rest of the discography. Well, I say the rest of the discography. I am one of those people that's like, I don't really touch the post-Wilder material all that much. For me, it really is Speak and Spell to Songs of Faith and Devotion, you know, that classic era. Depeche Mode really opened my ears. Alongside, I would say, Black Audio and the album Bright Black Heaven, I think it's called. I'm recalling names here off the top of my head. It can be difficult with me in the memory sometimes. But anyway, yeah, Depeche Mode opened my ears to this electronic kind of synth poppy. I mean, Depeche Mode has some rock elements in there. It was really a gateway into synth pop in general and this kind of 80s aesthetic that I'm a big fan of now. Would lead to so many things, open my ears to so many things. I guess you could say way back, liking the Michael Jackson hits already opened my ears kind of to some of this stuff, but Depeche Mode really opened my eyes, opened my ears, opened my mind, opened my heart to this kind of music. Depeche Mode is one of my all-time favorite groups. You know, really, you can't go wrong with a lot of these albums in this era with Depeche Mode. Fantastic stuff, fantastic songwriting. It's got this dark, edgy kind of quality, which I often really like, and mixed with just gorgeous songwriting, amazing singing. But yeah, Dave, the singer for Depeche Mode, is fantastic. Moving on to the number 7 pick, I have the American rock, glam rock, pop, what do you call them? Amazing, that's what I call them. It's Sparks. I got into Sparks really thanks to Franz Ferdinand, the band, not the man. Franz Ferdinand did a collab album, FFS, with Sparks, and the song Johnny Delusional is one of my all-time favorite songs, and that collab album led me to Sparks. So I booted up This Town Ain't Big Enough for the Both of Us. I booted up some of Kimono My House and thought, this is crazy. This sounds out of this world. You know, I had already been primed a little bit with liking bands like Muse for this kind of high falsetto-y male vocal, so that didn't really grate on me at all. And you had this quirky glam rock-ish sort of instrumentation going on Kimono My House, and I immediately had to be like, what's going on here? I see that they have tons of albums. I wanted a little bit of a guide, and I found the YouTube channel Canadian Studmuffin through looking up Sparks on YouTube, and they became one of my favorite reviewers at that time, and I still pop in to watch Canadian Studmuffin every so often. Go check their channel out. He's really, really knowledgeable on Sparks. He's been a fan of this band for ages and ages and ages. I'm really relatively new in comparison. I deep dove into Sparks in 2018. Yeah, this band is fantastic, though. You really got to check them out. They've done loads of sounds. Their first 2 albums are kind of weird, experimental rock almost. Got some orchestrated elements in the second one. You have the 3rd album, Kimono My House, fantastic. Their most famous album. You have, albums like Propaganda, which is pretty much Kimono My House Part 2. You have their double album. I'm not even going to try to remember the names or everything, because I do have problems with memory recall sometimes, especially when I'm talking like this. I can sit there and think, and it'll take me 20 seconds to recall. That's probably some of the jump cuts you're seeing. But anyway, yeah, they would go on. They did some synth pop stuff in the 80s. They did like EDM almost. They did this orchestrated kind of album in the early 2000s. Sparks is fantastic. They're one of the greatest pop groups ideas of all time. Really recommend them. Go check them out. Moving right along to number 8, Genesis. Specifically, proggy Genesis. So I'm talking about, mostly for me, I know Trespass is part of their proggy kind of era, and I really love The Knife off of that album, but really for me, we're talking Nursery Crime, we're talking Foxtrot, we're talking Selling England by the Pound. This group really got me into prog rock, and I have that to I have to thank another channel here. This is kind of the era where I started getting into more and more music review channels and things like that. So I want to shout out quickly Sea of Tranquility here. Pete Pardo. I watched his ranking video on Genesis, and I threw on Foxtrot because that's the one that he put at number one, and immediately we're talking Watcher of the Skies. Holy moly. This is one of those times where you get recommended something, you throw it on. Sometimes a reviewer is out of their mind. Sometimes you just don't have a clue what they're talking about. You don't get it. You don't get the hype. This album blew my mind on first listen. It blows my mind on repeat listens. Foxtrot is probably my favorite Genesis album. Fantastic stuff. Those years with Peter Gabriel, those years with Steve Hackett really are just fantastic. And yeah, I would go out, listen to King Crimson and Emerson, Lake and Palmer and Camel and all these kind of things. Yeah, Genesis, definitely check them out somehow if you haven't. Specifically their prog era. I did actually get into just a little bit of a tangent to continue with Genesis here. I just remembered this. Hopefully you'll stick with it. I just remembered that, yeah, I actually did listen to, because of my Primus pick earlier, right? They had covered a Peter Gabriel solo track. So I actually got into Peter Gabriel's album Melt, like really just before getting into prog Genesis. I very quickly looked up, oh, what? Peter Gabriel was in Genesis? What are you talking about? So I went and went on YouTube and looked up stuff about Genesis, and I found Sea of Tranquility and watched that video, and that's how that fits into that. So anyway, let's move swiftly on to my number 9 pick. This was around 2021 now. Genesis was 2020-ish. These are all approximate times if I do mention the date. Although I'm pretty sure I forgot on a lot of these things. I'm trying to improve my speaking skills, but I'm very rambly. I shift all over the place. I apologize for that. Thank you for keeping up with this. So yeah, on to my number 9. We're talking about 2021 in my life. We're talking about Death Grips. Now, my older brother, who got me into Billy Talent, Foster the People, Muse, he introduced me to Primus, although I became a much bigger Primus fan than my brother ever was. He introduced me to System of a Down, and around Depeche Mode was when my tastes really started to diverge somewhat, you could say. But Death Grips was another one that my older brother had listened to and loved and introduced me to. And at first, I really didn't get it. I wasn't that much of a hip-hop, rap sort of fan. I liked some of it. Most of it I didn't really care about. I wasn't really into. I didn't really listen to. I didn't really understand. I didn't get the hype. I didn't get the appeal, which is okay. It's whatever, but Death Grips opened my mind to a lot of things. I mean, here's this dark, abrasive, industrial hip-hop group that's just coming out here with absolutely insane energy. Crazy, crazy, crazy stuff. The first time I heard The Money Store, I thought it was weird. I didn't, and this is coming from somebody who had grown to really love Primus, grown to really love The Residents, big fan of both of those groups, and here I was going, this Death Grips group is bizarre. I don't get it. And I thought that there were a couple of tracks on Money Store that were somewhat interesting, but it was just not for me. And then randomly I was like, you know what? My brother is a really big fan of this group. I went back and I listened to the most recent album at that time, and it's still the most recent because they haven't put out a new album since then. We're talking about Year of the Snitch. This was the album where everything clicked. It was a bit more 80s sounding. It was a bit more synth poppy in one or two places. It just had gorgeous keyboards. It had interesting rhythms. And then all of a sudden, Death Grips as a whole opened up to me. And through Death Grips, more and more hip hop and rap has been growing on me. I'm pretty new to those genres, but I am getting into some of it now, generally speaking. So yeah, Death Grips, hugely important group to my musical taste and my musical evolution, and they definitely deserve a spot on this list. Let's go to the final pick. The 10th band or artist that changed my life in a big way, opened my mind, opened my ears, was Masayoshi Takanaka himself, the man, the myth, the legend. This is probably the happiest, most joyful kind of artist that I've gotten into, other than, you could say, a band that really could have made this list as well, but was just edged out by everything that did make the list, is the Beatles. So some of that stuff is pretty obviously joyful and, you know, that kind of a vibe as well. But Takanaka is maybe even still more joyful and just this beach, sunny vibe, this great atmosphere, fantastic guitar playing, fantastic instrumentation, always pretty much, and just fun songs, fun songwriting. Takanaka is a legend. Check out his music, check out Brazilian Skies, the album, check out Takanaka, the self-titled album, check out Natsu Zenkai, check out Can I Sing, check out, you know, pretty much any of his albums, and they're going to be a good time. There are some that I don't like as much because he has a really massive discography. But yeah, that is the 10 bands or artists that changed my life. That is kind of the front to back of my musical obsession, the 10 bands or artists that really shaped who I am as a listener, that changed my life, that have songs that just blew me away, that are emotional, that are criers, that are just fantastic, fantastic stuff. Thank you. I'll see you in the next video. Peace.